I was just looking, there's something very beautiful about sitting at the front and looking over all the people who've made all this energy and effort and whose way-seeking hearts have got them here. And there's something really touching and precious about that. And as I've been doing the walking, the peonies are doing their peony thing, and they're opening and blossoming, and I have that sort of sense of that's what we do. Given the right conditions, we'll open and blossom and fade, but beautifully. So I'm very grateful to be asked to give a talk. And we're being invited, as Josh and Flint said, both said, to spend really precious time together. Time where we slow down and we get more intimate with our worlds, our inside worlds, and with our wants and needs and desires, and a real time to be with ourselves. And then this morning when Josh opened the Zendo and we got it right, I was like, yes! It was such a sort of lovely feeling of us working together to create this space that we can move into. And we've chosen as this, the focus, this idea of the most important point, but as Flint said last night, there are hundreds of the buggers. So, it's kind of interesting about where does our mind go, what's the most important to us. And it changes, and as Suzuki Roshi himself said, not always so. Not always so. So whatever is the most important point at this point may really not be the one you wake up with tomorrow. And being intimate with ourselves and staying connected with ourselves, rather than having some idea that this is it. It's like, what's the one today? What's the one today? So today I'm choosing to focus on one particular aspect, and I'm aware that that'll change maybe even by the time I finish talking. And I was also thinking of the turning word idea, that, sometimes we have the most important point comes from a kind of unexpected enlightener. Someone just drops something in that you then carry close to your heart, maybe for years. And as I was thinking about that, I thought about a conversation I had with a friend many years ago when our life was in turmoil, and I really felt at the absolute edge of my resources. I had no clue what was going to be the best thing to do. I really was, and I'm saying talking, I was almost certainly crying. And she just said, she'd had her own chaos to live with, and she just said, I tried to do the biggest thing I can do in this moment. And that stayed with me all the time. That what's the biggest thing I can do? It doesn't have to be big. It isn't big, it's just the biggest. And it invites me to move away from contraction. It invites me to move away from fear. And it allows me to think, okay, well, I can't control a lot of what's going on, but what's the most generous? What's the kindest? What's the least contracted thing I can manage in this moment? And that's been the most important thing for a really long time, because life doesn't seem to get necessarily particularly easier. And much of my work and life, working as a therapist for over 30 years now, has really been about supporting people to become their embodied self, to do this thing that, as Flint and Josh said, the most difficult thing is that deep self-acceptance. Really the layers and layers that we can move through of self-acceptance. So to become the messy miracle, the flawed, miraculous human being that we are, possibly even, imagine this, without guilt or shame. Just that. What would that be like? Just without guilt or shame or defensiveness. To be exactly the shape and person that you are. And if we were plants, you know, we would be able to see there's some poor plants over there in the corner doing their damnedest with so little care, and there they are trying to be their full selves. And there's something about that, you know, we are our history, our culture, our immediate family, the time we're born into. I once heard a geneticist say we have over 400 dormant genes when we're born. Some from way back, way back, and some from more recent. And what happens in our lives depends on which ones of those get switched on and off. And we'll never know. We'll never know. We are miracles in action. And we don't know it, because we think we're a mess. So, how we flower or thrive is dependent on the known and the unknown and the unknowable. One of the really interesting things for me after spending all this time with people, trying to help them understand their histories and how they got there and why they are, is quite often we will never have a clue. It is not knowable. We are not knowable. And that's something we can kind of embrace. So today I wanted to explore this, which Josh used in a talk recently. He said, to feel your being here in this moment is a very important practice. To feel or be yourself at a certain time, in a certain place, that is why we practice our way. So if I said to you at this moment, check in, to feel your being here, to feel yourself at this exact particular time, at this exact particular place, and this right now, without changing a single thing, is your practice. Without even changing the parts of you that want to change the thing. Just that. To feel yourself being here. John Kabat-Zinn wrote in the wonderfully named Full Catastrophe Living, which is what we're all engaged in, all the suffering and stress and addiction comes from not realizing you already are what you're looking for. I think that's a really powerful statement. It's like the whole of your suffering, all of the suffering, stress and addiction comes from not realizing you already are what you're looking for. And then I got really curious, because in Zen we often talk about this idea of realizing. And so I looked up, what does realizing mean? And I love it, because it means 3 really different things. Isn't that a wonderful thing? It means to understand a situation, often suddenly. And I think that's often the way that we think about it in Zen terms, is to become aware of something that's already there and to realize it in this exact moment. It also means to achieve something you were hoping for. We don't want that in Zen, do we? We're not meant to have a goal. And the other one is used for saying something that you were worrying about has actually happened. So maybe realization is the whole mess. Becoming aware of exactly what's already there. Having a goal and then realizing your worst fears. And maybe your worst fear is being exactly who you are. Maybe that is the thing you are most fearful of. It's certainly the thing that I was probably most fearful of. What if this is it? What if this? What if this is it? It did not feel like a generous invitation to me. So, this invitation to being exactly and precisely without tinkering with who you are, without tinkering with anything, being your ordinary self and your ordinary mind. Maybe this is it. And one of the things I think is really interesting about, say, the contemporary neuroscience is it talks about, we use this ordinary mind idea, but what if your mind is your entire being moving through space? That we have, for a long time in the West, confined our mind to this idea of our thoughts, of our, this stuff that lives up in the top of the lighthouse. That's our mind. But it's really clear that we literally have an embodied mind. We literally have neurons across our entire body, around our hearts and in our gut. We are an embodied mind. We aren't a thinking mind. And there's a Japanese kanji, kunyomu, which means heart, mind, and spirit. And the whole Zen caboodle is really feeling yourself in this time and this place. Last night, Flint read a poem. So I wrote to him and said, "You nicked my poem." But you're going to get it anyway. So this is the poem that's called The Most Important Thing that Jan read so beautifully again. Because it feels to me like it speaks of this, being yourself in this place at this time. I'm making a home inside myself, a shelter of kindness, where everything is forgiven, everything allowed, a quiet patch of sunlight to stretch out without hurry. And I was looking over at Jill, who was stretching out in the sunlight, without hurry, where all that has been banished and buried is welcomed, spoken, listened to, released. A fiercely friendly, isn't that an interesting juxtaposition? A fiercely friendly place I can claim as my very own. I am throwing my arms open to the whole of myself, especially the fearful, fault-finding, falling apart, unfinished parts, knowing every seed and weed and drop of rain has made the soil richer. I will light a candle, pour a cup of hot tea, gather round the blazing fire of my own warmth. I will howl if I want to, knowing that this flame can burn through any perceived problem, any prescribed perfectionism, any lying limitation, every heavy thing. I am making a home inside myself, where grace blooms in grand and glorious abundance. Where grace blooms in grand and glorious abundance. A shelter of kindness that grows all the truest things. I whisper hallelujah to the friendly sky. Watch now as I burst into blossom. Like peonies, burst into blossom. And as many of you know who've been with me on retreat, I love the Dharma, I love my teachers, I love the Sangha and the power of Zazen. I hate sitting. My body has really different ideas about what happens when I come on retreat and sit. And for many, many years, in sitting, I was convinced, honestly, genuinely convinced, that if I could find the right seat, the right breathing, the right bra, the right shawl, the right technique, the right chair, you name it, and the right visualization, the right talking to myself, whatever it is, you name it, I have tried it. Oh, I have tried it. And I thought that I would find a way to stop the pain. I thought I would find a way to enjoy this thing that I espouse to other people. It's a bit of a clunky thing to not like sitting. I haven't, and it doesn't, and it's still basically torture. And in its own odd way, that torturous thing has become completely okay. I have given up. It's taken a long time. It's taken a really long time to give up, but I have given up sitting with any idea that it's going to be any different whatsoever. So yesterday, in the morning sit, I was checking in with the parts of me that were furious with me. What the fuck are you doing? You're doing it again! Dear God, why are you doing this? And they were saying, why do you make us do this thing you literally hate? You literally hate doing this thing, and you've got your bum on the chair again. Why are you doing that? And so I sat there and I thought, I have no clue. I don't know why I'm doing it, dear God. And then I sat with it, and I sat with it longer, and I started thinking about all the things I would prefer to be different. All the things that I would prefer to be different. I prefer not to have my mother's legs. I'd prefer not to have a Tory government. I'd prefer that we were kinder. I'd prefer that there was no war. I prefer that plants were looked after instead of abandoned in corners. I'd prefer that children were given respect. I'd prefer that difference mattered. There's 1,000 things that I would prefer. It doesn't matter. The preference is not the issue. And it became really clear to me that the preference is it's not the point. I'm sitting here because of my vow. I'm sitting here because happiness doesn't happen when I just lean into my preference. I can wriggle and move and find 5 minutes of comfort when I'm sitting. My sitting is actually no different. That's the really funny thing. If I do have kind of like quite a nice spacious 5 minutes, it's actually not different. So it's really just been for me such a lesson in preference doesn't matter. It's just a preference. What's vow? What's the thing that's actually going to make a difference? So because of you, people I love, because of the thing that I love, because of my teacher and all my teachers, I sit through the discomfort and the torture and the parts of me that are kicking off. And I sat and I offered myself some love for my fortitude and my perseverance and my damn stubbornness. And I offered myself some love. And as I was sitting there offering that, well, guys, you're doing okay. I suddenly had a feeling that I think I'm offering myself love. And that's the self-centered dream. This love is what is endlessly available. It's also nothing to do with me. This love is what's actually available everywhere, all the time. And we like to think of it as mine, or yours, or missing, or here. But it's actually not mine or yours. It's just the life force that gives the peonies their life, that gives us our lives. have to say, it was a lovely moment in which the pain didn't get any better. Well, that's very interesting to just unhook those two ideas. So, this feeling I'm having, it reminded me a lot of the story which I really love about Ordinary Mind is the Way, which is case 19 from the Gateless Gate. And Joshua asked Nansen, "What is the way?" "Ordinary mind is the way," Nansen replied. "Shall I try to seek after it?" Joshua asked. "If you try for it, you will be separated from it," responded Nansen. You can feel the frustration next. "How can I know the way unless I try for it?" persisted Joshua. Nansen said, "The way is not a matter of knowing or not knowing. Knowing is delusion, not knowing is confusion. When you have finally reached the true way beyond doubt, you will find it as vast and boundless as outer space. How can it be talked about on the level of right or wrong?" With these words, aren't you jealous? Joshua had a sudden realization. There's a little poem that one of the commentators, Moomun, wrote. "The spring flowers, the autumn moon, summer breezes, winter snow. If useless things do not clutter your mind, you have the best days of your life." If useless things do not clutter your mind, you have the best days of your life. I have to say that one of the other commentaries is Joshua took 30 years to really get to grips with it. So there's hope. So what we're being asked and offered or suggested is, even though that being born into this human body is an extraordinary event, a precious human life, ordinary mind is the way. Joshua immediately sees ordinary mind as a project, which most of us do. You know, I'm talking about original mind, or last night Flint was talking about that kind of mind that's just there. Can we return? Can we come back to that? And most of us think of our ordinary mind as flawed. We think of our minds as the problem. The things that they're empty of things they should be full of, or full of things that they should be empty of. Or, you know, we have that endless, if only, I wish, if it could be this way or that way. Preference. My mind is the problem. It makes me feel things I don't want to do, and it stops me from doing things I do want to do. How can this ordinary mind be the way? And so many people have a really adversarial or controlling or critical view of their mind. It's the tile we think we have to polish. It's a thing we think has to become another thing. When I first heard this koan, I wasn't relieved. I was really, really disappointed. I mean, like, genuinely disappointed. Because I had ideas that related to my love of magic, of science fiction, of fantasy, that, you know, like the boat would come over the shore and you'd be taken to this other land. It was going to be a completely different experience of being me. I was pretty strongly invested in something different, to being something different to who or what I was. And it seemed to me an incredibly ridiculous idea. Barry Magid said, "It's a hard lesson and a hard practice." In the commentary, Woman says that even when Joshua realizes this, it took him another 30 years to fully mature into it. To my way of understanding, it's quite common for people to have some momentary experience of this is it. A moment in which, for whatever reason, the struggle stops. The search stops. The sense of something being wrong or off balance just drops away. And for that moment, for that moment. This is just it. It's fine. And then we don't know what to do. He says that, are you simply able to be present with the next thing in your life, regardless of its content, and be able to say, this is what's happening, this is me. This is me being this particular me, in this particular place, at this particular time. No complaining, no comparison, just occupy this moment. This is my life. That was her, Joko Beck, who was his Dharma teacher. That was her, Joko Beck, way of explaining enlightenment to people. But when she explained it, most people didn't want to practice anymore. I think that's probably true. I get that. Most of us don't want to practice to be ourselves, living in our own bodies, in the hot mess of our lives. We don't want that. We've learned to think that there's something wrong that needs fixing. And maybe there's a perfected version of me that might be an expression of our Buddha nature. It cannot be this hot mess sitting here. It just can't. And I'm reminded of this often quoted piece from Suzuki Roshi. On the fourth day of Sesshin, as we sat with our painful legs, aching backs, hopes and doubts about whether it was worth it, Suzuki Roshi began his talk by saying slowly, the problems you are now experiencing will go away, we were sure he was going to say, will continue for the rest of your life. The way he said it, they did what you just did. We all laughed. So what would it be like right now? This moment. It's not going to get better than this. And freedom is right here. This. Maybe you could even go as far as to say, and that's okay. I have no complaints whatsoever. Dogen says in the Genjo Koan, realization is effort without desire, vast sky, transparent throughout, a bird flies like a bird, clear water all the way to the bottom, a fish swims like a fish. So there's something about this flow, that there's a kind of flow of life, and can we just be precisely and exactly in that flow of life? I read this piece by a movement teacher, an embodied movement teacher called Leo Pappas, and there was something in it, the way he put it, that had the feeling for me that somehow birds flying like birds I couldn't quite get that. He says, homeostasis is a fundamental expression of life. Homeostasis meaning balance. Homeostasis is a fundamental expression of life. The way a cell is relating to its environment in a continuous exchange between inside and outside. As an amoeba is flowing through its fluid environment, its cell membrane never gets in the way, pushing ahead or holding back. It simply serves as an intelligent interface, the perfect go-between that's almost invisible. What if our skin, our bodies, was that perfect membrane, just flowing through whatever is outside and whatever is inside? The perfect go-between that's almost invisible. And I thought of Izumi Roshi's mountain feet. touching the ground, and Blanche folding her robes. And when I saw Flint in the kitchen at Broad Howe, just taking some cups and washing them. Just something moving. Effort without desire. We might think, what supports are there for us to be with this ordinary mind, to feel our being in this moment, this very important practice? One of the things that I've found really useful to cultivate is what the Korean Zen teacher Seung Sang encouraged his students to have. He called it enough mind. Enough mind. To have the attitude, I already have everything I need. And on the Buddha's list of the 8 awarenesses of the enlightened person, don't you love a list? Is knowing how to be satisfied. Ordinary mind, knowing how to be satisfied. I'm supported in this by thinking of how in this present moment everything is present and there is nothing missing. Dogen says, each moment is all being. You were talking about the sunlight on the floor, the moment. Each moment is complete in itself. Including a noise. Each moment is complete in itself. Each moment is all being, is the entire world. Reflect right now whether any being or any world is left out of this present moment. What's left out? Nothing. The entire world is here. So if each moment is the entire world, then there can't be anything more. And of course, we can all think about many circumstances in which somebody really does need more. A mother living in a refugee camp with not enough food, somebody in terrible poverty, somebody in a difficult relationship that's dangerous. There are many times when we can think something needs to happen. But we can have upaya, we can have an appropriate response to that. But right now, there is nothing more needed here, right now. And we can all relate on a personal level to the overwhelming and cultural drive and the universal and supported overwhelming feeling of lack. You know, we live in a consumer society where we're shown what we haven't got all the time. You know, we're meant to be happy. And if you get X, Y, or Z, you will be happy. If you have this, if you don't have that. So we have to really sit with, what happens if this moment here, right now, is enough? And I have enough mind. The mountains, rivers, and earth are born at the same moment with each person. Last night when Flint talked about being in the hall and bemoaning his lack of meeting the famous, the stars of Zen, you know, that he was too old, and he had that timeless moment of everything he needs is right here, right now. It's never too late because it actually can't be too late. It's actually not possible. It can't be too early either. It can only be now, right now. The mountains, rivers, and earth are born at the same moment with each person. We are part of the co-creating world all the time. And we can cultivate our enough mind, our grandparent mind, our ordinary mind, that there is no special way to be, or no special thing to do. And I love this response, which I've shared with a couple of people recently because I love it so much. A student asked, "Does a Zen master suffer in a different way than his students suffer?" And Suzuki Roshi said, "In the same way. If not, I don't think he's good enough." So, if you think that someone's suffering is going to be different, it's not. You're doing something maybe not quite good enough if your suffering has become particularly special. So, we're not going to not suffer. We're going to keep walking into our immense, unfathomable ordinariness. We keep being pointed towards this teaching that everything we already have is what we need to realize, so that the great way opens in the ordinariness of our lives, the vastness of emptiness. For many of us who can't believe that who and how I am, it surely must be more special, more spectacular, more or less something. Our self-improvement project is to become other than what we actually are. But the invitation again and again and again is to recognize and realize that the amazing accumulation of every single thing that's ever happened to you in a vast and incomprehensible universe, with all the world before us and after us, is a nexus of experience that will never occur again. Never and always. Right now, this moment. Welcome to your own life. And I just wanted to finish with a poem written by a lovely writer called William Stafford. It's called You Reading This. And he wrote it 3 days before he died. 3 days before he died. This is what he was saying. Starting here, what do you want to remember? How sunlight creeps along a shining floor. What scent of old wood hovers. What softened sound from outside fills the air. Will you ever bring a better gift for the world than the breathing respect that you carry wherever you go right now? Will you ever bring a better gift for the world than the breathing respect that you carry wherever you go right now? Are you waiting for time to show you some better thoughts? When you turn round, starting here, lift this new glimpse that you found. Carry it into evening, all that you want from this day. The interval you spent reading or hearing this. Keep it for life. What can anyone give you greater than now? Sitting here, right in this room, when you turn around. What can anyone give you greater than now? Starting here, right in this room, when we turn around. Thank you.